So here's some long random thoughts. So bear with me. Not so random, really. You know that saying? It goes, we might all be in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. You know, some are in yachts, some are in dinghies, and so yeah, we might all be witnessing the same storm, but it's going to be a different experience for each person. And I was thinking about that as far as grief and loss goes, how people handle it, how they deal with it. Had a conversation with someone the day before yesterday, and I was explaining a few things, and honestly, the people that you try to explain things to are the ones that just aren't going to get it. I think there's just some people that just aren't going to be willing to listen or understand or even try. And so, first of all, if you try to explain to somebody how they make you feel, that they make you feel undervalued, or they make you feel bad, or they're just not very positive, you don't get to tell that person who's telling you how they make you feel that that's not how they make you feel. You don't get to tell somebody that. If somebody is saying to you, this is how you make me feel, you can't then say, no, I don't do that. Yeah, you do. You do, because you can't invalidate somebody's feelings, right? So this person is an issue. It's not somebody that I can easily get out of my life at the moment. Just forced to be there. And so don't really have a choice. Also forced to be in my kids' lives. Just, again, extenuating circumstances. Don't have a choice at the moment. Limited exposure, but can't do anything about it right now. Working on it, but that's a whole other story. So this particular person is abrasive and undervalues people for sure. And my son is 22, and as many of you have known, if you followed any of my stories about the loss of when my husband died, my son's father, it was gruesome. My son was 20. It was 2 years ago. It was gruesome, and it is a loss that we're still coming to terms with. 7 months after he died, I also lost my dad. And I do feel that I can speak to grief. I can speak to the experience of grief, or my experiences of grief. And it's not the same. It's just not the same. My son losing his father is not the same as me losing my father. Me losing the love of my life is not the same as me losing my dad. My dad, I'm 54, my dad lived to be 80. My son's dad lived to be 60. And my dad had a really good life. He was a happy man. He was a fulfilled man. He followed all of the things that he wanted to do. He was, by no means was he rich, but he was rich with experience and joy. He did a lot of things in life that brought him happiness. He had motorcycles, and he had guns, not killing guns, just gun range guns. He had boats, and he had so many different hobbies that he followed through the years, camping, and he was a guy's guy. He was an old Army guy. And he had a lot of joy. He had a lot of laughter. Also filled with sadness. He lost his mom at a very young age when he was in his 20s, very suddenly, very sadly, and it definitely affected him for all of his life, the rest of his life. But that being said, he was a good dad for the most part. He could be a jerk sometimes, but I lost him and I miss him, but I also know that the grief that I feel for him is just missing him. It's not the same as Per, my son's dad. He lived a tortured life, very tortured life. He was dealt with abuse as a child, and it changed the way he became an adult. It changed the adult that he became, and he had moments of clarity and consistency, and then he had vast, long periods of time which were dealing with alcoholism and depression and some mental illness. And in the end, he ended up dying very alone. And the aftermath of that, you can look at my other videos regarding that. They're on YouTube. I can do more story times about that. But anyway, the point is that the grief that we hold for him is completely different than the grief that I had for my dad, because the grief that I have for Per also stems from not having been able to fix him, help him, be there for him. He was just too far gone, and his death ended up being tragic. And the aftermath for my son and I was tragic. We had to identify his body as it was pulled out of the refrigerator at the morgue. And then we had to deal with the aftermath of realizing how he died, which was extremely bloody, and basically he bled to death. And nobody was aware of what had happened until after the fact. My son and I had to travel to Denmark with less than a day's notice to deal with everything. And it took us 5 weeks of international stuff, dealing with things internationally and international death. The Danish bureaucracy, or the Danish way of doing things. He died in Denmark. When my dad died, he simply passed away, and arrangements were made. You know, for my stepmom, obviously it was terrible experience. She was at the hospital, and so her grief is different than my grief. So anyway, I know this is getting really long. I don't appreciate anybody that's listening. So the other night, I was explaining, my son had been rude to this individual, warranted. It was warranted. He was callously spoken to, and he reacted. My son was callously spoken to and reacted in a curt and, I guess, disrespectful manner. Just basically, leave me alone, get away from me, kind of a thing. So this person I then was having a conversation with, trying to smooth things over and explain exactly what the deal was. This person is also in their 50s. And when I explained that, hey, listen, my son has been through a lot, and is still dealing with things and is still trying to navigate life and figure out how to deal with things because of the loss of his father at 20 years old. This person, who's in his 50s, reacted by saying, well, everybody's lost someone. I lost my mother too. And I said, yeah, but this loss was particularly terrible. It was a particularly terrible loss we had. My 20-year-old son had to identify his father's body out of a refrigerator. He had to see the state of his body as it was when he passed away. He had to see the state of his living conditions, and in the way that he had been living, bleeding to death for weeks, and because of the low blood, he was not right in his mind. So we dealt with that, and we're still dealing with that, and I don't know if I'll ever get over that. Will I always grieve for my dad? Yes. Will I always grieve for Per? Yes, in a completely different way. And my son's grief is in a completely different way for his father than mine is for my father. So everybody deals with it differently. And so that whole saying, we are in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat, can apply in so many different things. And it just made me so fucking angry that someone could react in that way with so much callousness and such a lack of empathy, just to say, well, we all have something that we have to deal with and we have to get over it. Yeah, we do get over it in our own time. And I do feel that if you are in a state where you have been through a difficult thing, and it has traumatized you and changed you very to your core of your soul, and you explain that to someone, you may not want special treatment, but you at least want them to understand where you're coming from and to maybe give you a little bit of empathy as to how you are, why you are, you know. It would be, I haven't lost a child, knock on wood, but if I were to be dealing with someone who's lost a child, I wouldn't, and they were, say they were having a bad day, going through a shitty day, or in a bad mood, or just not wanting to talk or whatever. It's kind of like, if you know that that person has been through something, then you know what, just step back a little bit and have a little bit of understanding, and maybe not a free pass, but just a little bit of extra kindness. Because again, the guy that's, if we're in this storm and the guy that's in the yacht is riding it out with a glass of champagne, and the guy that's in the rowboat is bailing for his life, bailing water, yeah, it's the same storm. But for that guy in the yacht to say, oh, hey, it's fine, everything's fine, and I hope this makes sense. And I just be aware of people. And it sucks that there are people on this planet that are incapable of empathy or incapable of even looking at something from somebody else's point of view. And when I tried to explain this to this person, and they told me that's not how they make me feel, and B, everybody's going through something, you know what? Fuck you. You're not a nice person. you are just not a nice person, and karma's gonna smack you upside the head real hard someday, and hopefully sooner than later. Yeah, all right, so ran over 15 minutes of your time. Thank you, and I'm sorry, and if you got through this, good for you. And yeah, be kind.